I would say to you clearly we would like to have a settlement. Yes, we want to return to normality. We are, after all, members of the free world.
Prime Minister Ian Smith of Rhodesia talking recently in Salisbury.
Where our main enemies are members of the
in
free
the troubled
world.
politics of southern Africa,
Clearly, I
Mr.
would
Smith's
say
one of the
those
key
problems are a
figures,
little more
and as
serious
the
now
pressure
than they
mounts
were
for a
a couple of years
solution,
ago.
what he says and
But I
does
think a very
becomes
apt
ever more
comparison
important.
is with what
We'll
the
have
position
more of the
was
interview later,
at the time we
along with some
declared our
other views from white
independence in
Rhodesians.
1965.
But first,
Our
a quick
problems are
look
not
at
as
some of the
serious now
background.
as they were then. I believe this is...
In Zurich recently, Rhodesia was one of the main topics when Dr. Henry Kissinger, America's Secretary of State, met South African Premier Johannes Vorster. Dr. Kissinger wants what he calls majority rule with minority rights, and Mr. Vorster, with his vast influence over Rhodesia's economy, could make it happen. Although their positions are very different, it's clear both men see eventual majority rule in Rhodesia as inevitable. In the Rhodesian capital of Salisbury, there are no outward signs of crisis. Nothing to show that after 11 years of illegal independence, white Rhodesia is now fighting for its existence. Despite United Nations sanctions, Rhodesia's economy has grown by over 7% a year. Politically, 250,000 whites still dominate the nation's 6 million blacks. But the pressures for change are increasing. Guerrilla activity is now a serious problem. Salisbury itself has suffered isolated bomb incidents this year, and the closing of the border with Mozambique has hit the economy badly and increased Rhodesia's isolation from the outside world. Faced with these pressures, some whites are now leaving. Official immigration figures show a net loss of over 2,000 for the first half of this year, compared with a gain of nearly 2,000 for the same period last year. The authorities say the picture's been falsified by refugees from Angola, but they're so worried they've reduced by 4/5 the money which immigrants are allowed to take with them. Despite this, some families are still cutting their losses and getting out, taking with them skills which Rhodesia can ill afford to lose. Mrs. Anne Wortham was born in Australia, and soon she'll be going back there, along with 11-month-old daughter Miranda and husband Chris, who teaches English at the university.
I have two reasons for leaving. One is the situation in the country as a whole. I think it's fairly nearly hopeless in the sense that neither whites nor blacks, the dominant voices of either, are really prepared to compromise on any issues, not in any meaningful way. My personal trouble is that I'm required to do national service, and I find the conditions under which one has to work are inimical to me. I don't like the system, and I find I can no longer work within it.
It's the eastern part of Rhodesia that's taking the brunt of the guerrilla attacks. A few weeks ago, a young white girl was killed in a guerrilla ambush on this road into Umtali. Now civilians are always given a military escort. But there's still a threat from landmines, which have accounted for many of the 500 or more civilian deaths so far. The border town of Umtali presents a very different picture from Salisbury. The military presence in the streets shows just how active are the guerrillas operating from Mozambique. More than half the regular Rhodesian army is black. At the moment, it's only 6,000 strong, but it's recently been boosted by volunteers and by a call-up of reservists. There are probably 20,000 troops in the field at the moment, and the call-up period's been extended to 18 months to make sure the army keeps up the strength.
Beautiful.
In 4 years of war, the has killed 1,500 guerrillas with a loss of 150 of its own. But the guerrilla threat continues to grow. This is another indication of how the security situation is changing life here. This should be the height of the school holiday season in Umtali, but the tourists are staying away, and at hotels like this, bookings are down as much as 80% on last year. The hotel keepers are understandably unhappy, but among the local population, morale is still...
How do you feel about the situation?
Oh, I'm feeling fine. I'm not terrified or anything. We're really going to stay.
What is the situation here?
Well, it's absolutely calm. There's nothing going on at all. We've had a few little old bangs, but they didn't do very much. And I think everybody's completely at ease.
Anyway, I was born here and it's my country and I'm going to stay here.
I feel quite
Thank you.
easy about it. I think we're going to stay on. Everything's so fine.
Are you a bit frightened by the guerrillas attacking?
No, I don't think so. No.
Yes, very proud of Rhodesia.
Very, very proud. We only wish that the other side of the world could exactly see how we're carrying on here. And if I won our Rhodesian suite, I'd spend it on sending the fares home for everybody to come here to this country.
Some people are leaving Rhodesia, aren't they?
Yes, but we're not worried over that. We had people leave Rhodesia in the recession period when UDI came, but they all come back. Oh, 90% of them do. Yes, we love Rhodesia. As I say, it's given...
The determination of the whites to stay here and stick it out is vital to Rhodesia's survival as a European-run nation. And there's plenty of that kind of determination here at Chipinga, not far from the Mozambique border. Bruce Rodwell came here 8 years ago, and since then he's turned uncultivated bushland into a productive coffee plantation, employing 80 Africans. Although wages are low, only 10 to 20 pounds a month, it's enough to live on. And workers live rent-free in compounds where they can grow their own food. Without this plantation, most would be simply unemployed. The Rodwells came here from Zambia, where Bruce Rodwell claims corruption and inefficiency made it impossible for him to operate. He says he's had no threats or signs of disloyalty from his African staff here, and he's no intention of leaving Rhodesia.
Situation affecting you?
So what difference
Not
has
a great
the guerrilla
deal,
threat
Peter.
made to him?
It has changed our way of life. Now we have got a terrorist presence in the district, to the extent that we have to take a good few precautions to sort of protect ourselves. As far as the farming is concerned, we used to draw a lot of labour from Mozambique. They used to come over here to get work, and this has ceased since they gained their independence. And that spread our labour resources a little bit thin. And so we haven't got quite as much labour on the farms as we would really like. But apart from that, life goes on very normally here.
How is it going to affect you if there is a quick transfer to majority rule here in Rhodesia?
If there's a quick transfer to majority rule, I think there'll be absolute chaos in this country, quite honestly. There's no organised African party that the country could be handed over to for reasonable government. The terrorist organisation, I should say, is communist dominated now. And they would try very hard to ensure that they were the new government. Whether any African government could resist these pressures, whether they could avoid tribalism, whether they could avoid infighting for power between themselves at this present moment, I very much doubt.
But as a farmer, how...
The disunity of the various black forces has led some white Rhodesians to simply dismiss the guerrilla threat. But Brian Fothergill isn't one of them. As the editor of the influential Rhodesian Herald, he's more informed than most about what's actually going on, and he sees absolutely no cause for complacency.
The situation in Rhodesia is extremely serious, in my opinion. The terrorism is increasing, has increased a lot in recent months, and I don't think there seems much hope that it's going to lessen in the immediate future. I think it might even get worse.
What about the economy?
Well, the economy inevitably suffers in the circumstances, and has suffered a great deal. I think it's wonderful the way it has stood up, but don't forget that one of the problems, so far as the economy is concerned, is the great number of young men who have to be doing their military commitments, fighting the terrorists.
What do you think is going to happen? How much longer can this serious situation described go on without Rhodesia collapsing?
That's the $64,000 question. How much longer can we go on? We've gone on for a really long time so far, haven't we? Admittedly, the circumstances are now very different from what they were during the first 11 years, the 11 years since UDI. I don't think there's much doubt that we can continue to contain terrorism, even if it does escalate and get worse than it is at the moment, for quite a considerable time. But there is a limit, I believe, to the time we can continue to contain the economy.
I mean, do you think...
Economic collapse would hit many urban blacks just as hard as it would the whites. But they've now got other worries. Moderate African leaders have demanded majority rule within 2 years, but there's a widening gulf between the black politicians and the guerrilla leaders in the field. There's also great uncertainty about what kind of Rhodesia the liberation movements wish to create. Against this background, Mr. Smith has been trying to accommodate black demands without yielding what he sees are the essentials. But does he accept that there will one day be a black government in Rhodesia?
Well, I must be consistent. I say this not only to you, but I say to a number of people. In Rhodesia, we have to try to get away from talking about government based on race or based on colour. I think this is the sort of thing that bedevils the Rhodesian situation. You see, we are so different to all the other countries in Africa, all the old colonial countries. Here the British government acted in the capacity of a caretaker or a trustee until the time came to hand over. This has never been the situation in Rhodesia. Rhodesia was virtually given to the white people in 1923, with a government that was exclusively white. At any rate, the British government said to us, to our parents, you can go and settle there for all time, that's your country. So I believe we've got to find a solution which means that we're going to have black and whites governing in Rhodesia, all the people of Rhodesia, the best. At least it stands to the credit of myself that for the first time in history I have brought black Rhodesians into our government, and I now have them in the highest ranks of government. This is the way things must develop.
How do you react then to the news that Dr. Kissinger and Mr. Forster are meeting in Switzerland?
I believe this is good news. Again, it indicates to me that the Americans are beginning to take an interest in Southern Africa, and I hope that they can save Southern Africa from communism. I don't want to be too dramatic, but this is a distinct possibility. So the fact that Dr. Kissinger is talking to Mr. Forster at least shows that he's willing to talk to one of the participants in this drama that is taking place in Southern Africa. South Africans are the biggest and the most important country, clearly, and one would expect them to take a lead in whatever takes place in this part of the world.
Do you sometimes the way forward towards a settlement? What new are you prepared to say that will encourage people to believe a settlement can be achieved?
I don't know if there's anything new I can say that hasn't been said before. Of course, I can reiterate what I said before. We want to talk to people.
Would you like to meet Dr. Kissinger, sir?
I'm happy to meet anybody in this world who is constructively trying to assist us in solving our problem. From what I can gather, Dr. Kissinger at this moment, on behalf of the American government, is taking an interest in Southern Africa, and under those circumstances, yes, I would like to meet him.
You say you'd like to talk to people. Do you include the Africans now? Would you like to talk to Mr. Nkoma again?
Well, I have talked to Mr. Nkoma on many occasions, and if he believes he has anything constructive to contribute, I will be ready to talk to him tomorrow again.
But are you able to hold out any encouragement to people like Mr. Mkoa and others that you're now prepared to recognise the prospect of majority rule that much sooner than you were prepared to before?
Well, you know, a lot depends on what you mean by majority rule.
I mean African rule, Mr. Smith. Africans running this country.
Do you mean irresponsible African rule, or do you mean African rule with certain qualifications that will indicate that we're going to have responsible government? I think that's the crux of it.
Ruled by Africans that you would accept as your rulers, having negotiated with them, moderate Africans.
Well, I have negotiated with a lot of Africans who are not moderate, you see, so I don't think the two are synonymous. Well, I find him rather erratic, if I may use that expression. Sometimes I find him reasonable, particularly when we're talking together, and other times I find that he is influenced by the wild people, and he finds, I'm sure, or he believes that if he doesn't adopt this rather extreme stance, that he will be out of a job, and he's influenced by this kind of thing. But let me say this to you. For a long time I've said, I am not prepared to consider government in Rhodesia by people simply because they are of a certain colour. I believe that is the wrong solution to Rhodesia. Rhodesia is composed mainly of two races, the blacks and the whites. I believe we both have a part to play. I want the best government for Rhodesia, irrespective of colour. Now, the minute you start putting a colour connotation on your government, then I believe we will have failed to achieve what is the ideal for Rhodesia. We would have lost out if we get to that situation.
But if the only solution that the rest of the world appears ready to accept, rightly or wrongly, is African rule, are you not prepared to move towards that? And if not, then surely there's no settlement in society, is there?
I'm an African, so I'm quite happy with that.
Black African rule.
Well, I'm not prepared to concede that government has got to be based on colour. Surely we must have the better solution. We will find that Rhodesia will go communist. Well, I am so opposed to communism and everything that it stands for, I must resist that. Maybe I will lose in the end, but I will go on resisting that kind of solution because it is the wrong solution for Rhodesia. I repeat to you.
Many white Rhodesians would certainly agree with that view. But as the security situation worsens and the political pressures increase, more and more of them are realizing that their traditional attitudes are no longer
Those
applicable.
principles are still,
Does this
as they
mean
have
there's
been
now
since
room for some
widely
real
accepted
concessions?
by most of the white people
Brian
in Rhodesia?
Fothergill again.
Very good question, I think. It's very difficult to say, but I would say this, that there is a considerable feeling in Rhodesia at the moment, I think, among white people, that we have got to be more elastic in our thinking, that we have got to be readjusting to the present circumstances which were quite different, which are quite different now from what they were. And I think it would be true to say that there is a movement among the European people of this country to the acceptance that we've got to do something, and pretty soon, and even maybe something pretty dramatic, in order to live with present conditions. And this being the case, I think Mr. Smith would have a considerable body. I'm not necessarily saying majority, but a considerable body of the white people on his side.
Do you see any incentive to accept that in order to get a settlement you're going to have to make radical changes inside Rhodesia?
I will resist revolutionary changes, especially if I think they are wrong. I'm not prepared to concede that we must make changes in Rhodesia simply to appease the outside world. Politicians in other countries who feel that they've got a problem want to get rid of the problem at any cost to Rhodesia. You know, we've got to go on living in Rhodesia and live with the problems that we create. Therefore, I think our views should be given very serious consideration, as opposed to the views of people who don't have to go on living with Rhodesia, who can produce a settlement here which is the wrong settlement and then go home and have no more problems. I repeat to you, I believe the majority of black Rhodesians will agree with the thinking that I am now putting before you. Now, if the majority of black Rhodesians and the majority of white Rhodesians can agree, then surely this is the correct solution for Rhodesia. Why should we impose a wrong solution on Rhodesia because people from outside Rhodesia, for some reason or other, believe that this is the answer? This is absolutely illogical, isn't it? It would be criminal to do this sort of thing to Rhodesia.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.